Good morning to all. My name is Anjali Vishwakarma. I'm professor of SIRT. So in my today's YouTube lecture, I will going to discuss about the computer memory. As we all know that there's a memory in a computer where we can store the information or data. As we all know that we are working on a system. So whenever we work on a system, here is need to provide to store that information or data or whatever we are doing on the system. So in a future time we want this type of data, so here we have to provide a storing place or memory where we can store that information, that program or instructions, information, data. So this data, information, programs we can use at the later time in a future time. So here we have memory, or we can set the computer memory where we can store data on a temporary basis or a permanent basis as we want. So the memory means the place where we can store the things, data or information. So it is a storing place where we can store the informations. So there's a unit, or we can say there are various types of units where we can measure the computer memory. So these are classified as bit, bytes, kilobyte, megabyte, gigabyte and terabyte. So the bit is the smallest unit. If I'm talking about the byte, then 8 bit is so the one so the 1 byte is equals to 8 bit. And if I'm talking about the kilobyte, then 1 kilobyte is equals to 1024 byte. And if I'm talking about the megabyte, then 1024 kb is equals to 1 megabyte. So in gigabyte, 1024 MB is equals to 1 gigabyte. And if I'm talking about the terabyte, then 1024 gigabyte is equals to 1 terabyte. So we can say that bit is the smallest unit, and the terabytes where we can store the large amount of data. Now memory. So as I already told about, memory is a place where we can store the information. So this memory is divided into two parts, that is primary memory and secondary memory. Or we can further divide this primary memory in two parts, that is RAM and ROM. And then again RAM can be classified in two parts, that is dynamic RAM and static RAM. If I'm talking about the RAM, then RAM is again divided into three parts, that is PROM, EPROM and double EPROM. And if I'm talking about the secondary memory, then it is divided into some parts like floppy disk, hard disk and CD-ROM. So if I'm talking about the primary memory, this memory is also called main memory or the internal memory. It is located on the motherboard of the system. It is a place where only little bit of data are stored either by manufacturer or by the user. So in this primary memory we can store data for the temporary purpose, and is again further divided into two parts, that is RAM and ROM. So RAM means random access memory, in which the RAM is volatile and loses the information once the power is turned off. It means when the power is turned on, then the information will be there. If the power is turned off, then all the data are loose, or we can say all the data are erased. So this is what the random access memory, or if I'm talking about the random access memory, that it looks like that, and is again classified into two parts, that is static RAM and dynamic RAM. So the static RAM, if I'm talking about the static RAM, then it is uses the transistor to store the data. It is faster than dynamic RAM. It generates less heat, and its cost is high, but it is stored data in less amount, but it means it gives less capacity. It consumes more power. So this is what about the static RAM. If I'm talking about the dynamic RAM, then it is cheaper, it consumes less power, it has more capacity to store the data, but it is slower than the static RAM. And if I'm talking about the next type of primary memory, then this is called ROM, or we can say that it is a read-only memory. It's also called primary memory, which store data. The memory is mainly used for our computer. When we just turn on our computer, it contains BIOS. It is non-volatile memory, so it contains data even if the system is turned off. It means it never loses our information when the system is off. So there are the three types of ROM, that is PROM, EPROM, and double EPROM. The full form of PROM is programmable ROM, and the full form of EPROM, erasable programmable read-only memory. And if I'm talking about the double EPROM, then its full form is electrical erasable programmable read-only memory. So these are the types of read-only memory. One by one I will discuss about these types of memory, and this read-only memory looks like that. Now programmable ROM. In this programmable ROM is the memory where user can insert the data of choice only once. It can only be read and never written, means recorded information cannot be changed. This is what the programmable ROM. Once we write on the programmable ROM, it never be changed. It's always static, we can say. So this is what the programmable ROM. At a time of program, all the data are fixed, so that so these data can never be altered. Now the second one is erasable programmable ROM. In this, the EPROM information can be erased and the chip can be programmed to record a different information. In this, if we want to remove the data, then we have to use ultraviolet rays. So this is what the erasable programmable read-only mean, in which data written once, but if we want to that erase the data, then here we have to use ultraviolet rays. Now the last one category of read-only memory is electrical erasable programmable read-only memory. In this, if we store the data or at later time we want to remove the data, then here we have to use, so here by using electric signal we can remove the data. So here no special tools can be required to erase the data. Here in the EPROM, here we have to use ultraviolet rays to remove the data, but here we don't have to use any type of tool that can erase our data. So here by using electric signals we can remove the data that is written before. Okay, so this is what the type of the ROM. Now I'm talking about the secondary memory. So that's if we want to store data in a long time and for the large amount, then here we use the secondary memory. So this is a secondary memory, which is also called auxiliary memory. In this type of memory, cost per bit of the storage is low. It means it is not costly as primary memory. So the operating speed is slower than primary, but it gives slower slower speed. So the place where we store our personal data is known as secondary memory. It is a fundamental component of the system. It is non-volatile nature, so that we cannot lose the data when power is also. Here it gives the one advantage that whenever we store the data, it cannot be removed. So there are two types of accessing method of the data. Here we use sequential and direct method. If I'm talking about the sequential method, then we can search the data sequentially, or we can read the data line by line. And if I'm talking about the direct method, in which computer can go directly to the information that user wants. So this secondary memory is looking like that. So magnetic tapes are used where large volume of data is stored for the longer time. The cost of storing data is expensive. It means it is an expensive device. It can be 12.5 millimeter to 25 millimeter wide and 500 meter to 1200 meter long. So this is what the information about the magnetic disk, and it is divided into two parts, that is hard disk and floppy disk. So the hard disk is a fixed disk, a fixed drive. This is a place where we can store our data or information so that we can retrieve for the further use. This is a place where we can install our OS so that we can run on computer. Hard disk can fix in our system, and if we require more hard disk, then it comes in removable also. The average computer today come with 250 to 500 GB hard disk. So hard disk is an expensive storage device because this device contains disk as well as drives. Now the floppy disk, it is a direct storage device. It is very small storage capacity which is used to store the information, but at the limited amount. So this is floppy disk have many disadvantages, like it generate heat and dust. If I'm talking about the floppy disk, it comes in two sizes, that is 3.5 inches and 5.25 inches. So this is what the floppy disk. And if I'm talking about the optical disk, then again it is a storage medium, and it is called the secondary storage memory. It can store data in large amount, and it is divided into two parts, that is CD and DVD. So the CD is known as compact disk, mainly used to store data. It can store data 80 minutes of continuous video recording. The space of CD is up to 700 MB. It means we can say that compact disk size of 700 MB. Due to high storage capacity, it is widely used. So whenever the compact discs come, they are widely used. They are used in everywhere. So this is divided into two parts, that is CD-ROM and CD read-write. Now the digital versatility. So we can say that this is a DVD. It stores data large amount. It has a higher capacity to store information as compared to CD. It can store data an amount of 4.7 GB, and it is divided into two parts, the DVD-ROM and DVD read write. So this is what the memory. So whenever we are working on anything, so we have large amount of data. So here is need to provide a space where we can store the information if we are working something. So at the later time we want it work. So we want to store that information, or we have our personal data related with the videos, photos, we have personal accounts information, or lots of things that we want to store or we can use at later time. So memory is usable. So this is what the computer memory, as I discussed in my lecture. So thank you so much.